Do you think money grows on trees? I do. In today's episode, I'll tell you why, and why that's a key to us fixing our food systems and our money systems so they work better, support us more, and make us feel better about the future, with a few tips on how to get through the present until those welcome changes come into play. I'm Heather McLeod. Something Different This Way Comes explores how to fix what's not working. As a certified financial planner, I'm on the front lines, seeing how systems that are intended to do certain good don't always miss the mark. In fact, I think it's fair to say it's not working very well. It should be hard to get this wrong, but it ain't. It's hard to get it right, and that's not right. And speaking of what's not right, the other thing I've been digging into even longer is our food systems. As a locavore, growing much of what I eat for 20 years, a journalist who kept coming back to food from field to belly. I think the measure of an economy's health is how we manage our food. And our economy is not terribly healthy. But what would good look like? Well, let's start with what do we have? And then a little digging into how did that happen? Before we get around to, well, what can we do about it today? Living with this less than perfect. And then a bit of dreaming. What can we do about it? As citizens, as employers, as people who live somewhere and care. Something different, this way comes something different, something different, something different, this way comes something different, something different. Money trees. What, you think that money grows on trees? You know what I think it does? Because money represents what we value. And what could be more valuable to us than the food we need to live? And food grows on trees. And in bushes, it's roots, it's plants and generosity feeding us. Money trees. I have 3 stories of what's going on right now that comes to my mind when I think about food and money. And the first is gardening. I got to garden a bit growing up. I remember when I was 6 or 7, we moved to Camrose, and we put our trailer on a bit of land that had enough space Mom could grow veggies in the back, and that was so yummy and such a wonderful thing. But also, my grandma would take me out with her to help at friends' gardens, and that was lovely. My other grandma too, the one in Alberta and the one in Toronto. But in the year before my daughter was born, my first daughter, Ella, it was the year that 100-Year Diet came out. And my co-host and I had a show on CBC Radio back then. We kind of made fun of them. We're like, well, of course they could get away with eating everything, only things that were raised within 100 miles of their apartment in Vancouver. It's so warm in Vancouver. There's practically no winter. We could never do it here. And we got this enormous pushback from listeners. First Nations saying, what are you talking about, man? Like, everybody is native to somewhere. Every food is local to somewhere. And this land has fed its people since time began. Obviously, it is doable. I'd never thought of that. And then I met people that were making a point of doing much of eating mostly things that are local. It was a whole soul shift for me, that understanding. So my daughter Ella was born, and then she died. She died the day she was born, and it took a year for the coroner's inquest to come back and say what the heck happened. So here I am with all this mother energy, and I got this notion that I wanted to leave her a legacy, because nobody else had met her, right? She just been and gone. If it was something that I could do that would be more good than not, I decided food. Why don't I join this little local movement of trying to grow most of what I eat? I lived in the co-op Castle Green at that time, and our community garden was surrounded on 3 sides by bush. So here I am, book smart, willing lots of energy to work really hard, there all the time, right? First it's cutting away the grass that wants to strangle out my little plots, and then digging in some fertilizer and seeds and seedlings and thinning them and watering them and watching out for those midsummer frosts we have to watch out for here, and so much effort and so easily all for naught. If I just miss one step, it would all be for naught. It made me really amazed at the professional food growers out there, and all the skills they bring to that. But at the same time, I was being humbled by that bush that was right next to me, because somehow it was moist where my garden was already parched, and it was dense with plants that seemed to grow in harmony and balance with one another, close proximity, interlaced, where I was working hard to kind of pull out the uninvited ones and thin the ones I'd planted so that they could have enough space to grow without competition. And after a few humbling years of trying to figure out how to grow much of what I eat, I started thinking and looking more and more at that bush and questioning the wisdom that I'd grown up with, that it was this kind of organized, systematic, controlled agriculture that had taken my species from the insecurity of pre-agriculture times to boosting population and great civilizations of post-agriculture, of agricultural communities. Clearly there was an opportunity to do this better, that the bush had figured out, and I had not. And many years later I thought of this, having by then read many books talking about what we now call permaculture, that a characteristic of all indigenous cultures that have endured for millennia, for long periods of time, is that they build relationship with their place on the planet, and they maximize the resilience and the proximity of their foods and their medicines. They make them a part of their setting. The plants meet them more than halfway, and the animals too. It doesn't have to be this hard and insecure. So I think last summer I was whiling away an hour at the Red Rock Folk Festival with a fish scientist who spent his summers up at Wapakimi Park, which is quite a ways north of here. He was there to look at the fish, but that meant he was portaging and he was camping, and he was noticing at the traditional portage sites and campsites that the Anishinaabe had been using for thousands of years, there was this wealth of food plants and medicine plants. Money trees. We have them. It's actually something people have been figuring out for much longer than we've been trying to make this monoculture, max-controlled, I'm the smartest person in this field way of growing food. And then my third one. In that same early era, about 20 years ago, when I got really obsessed with food. Well, my mom would say I've always been obsessed with food. There's some real truth in that. But a lot of the stories that I found myself doing as a CBC reporter were around food. And one was the Food Action Network of Northwestern Ontario, putting out reports that were saying how many fields, what do we produce, how many farmers, what does food insecurity look like, what is our food shed? This is a local farmer, Brendan Grant of Sleepy G Farms, that's his term. What does our food shed look like? How is it changing? They do this amazing, robust research. And they also had been working to support, somebody who says, we can't mill. We grow wheat here, but we can't mill flour. Let's try to solve that. It was a job and a half to figure out how to solve that, because you need inspectors that aren't here because there isn't a mill, and then you can't get a mill till you have an et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can't get the right size equipment until you do. But there was a lot of community effort, and the Food Action Network had a part to play in bringing people together and problem solving. So a few years later, I'm into finance, and I come across again these reports. I'm staying on top of it actually as they come out, but I'm looking at it with fresh eyes, because they're reporting the average income of farms. They're reporting how many people are working on those farms. They're reporting how many farms have people needing to have a job other than the farm in order to afford to run the farm. And what they're painting a picture of is an unprofitable sector. And since then, I have met, just recently, I was chatting with a farmer. He's a guy who's gotten into farming as a second career, and his friends, he told me, said, "There's no money in farming. What are you doing? Why?" And he said, "Why? How could there be no money in farming? That's a market that's never going to go away. We totally need food. We're absolutely always going to value food. How could there not be money in farming?" And there isn't. Most farms are acts of generosity. They are profitable enough, to pay people for work. And they certainly are professions. Oh my gosh, the skill involved to pull that one off. But the standard in the financial world, in the I want to qualify for financing world, of profitability for a business, one that means that you pay off the cost of buying or building a business within 10 years of starting. And by 5 years in, you are clearly earning the profit part that's going to pay back the startup costs before the 10 years are up. That standard really doesn't fit many farms at all. And the ones it does fit have done one of two things. They've gotten really big. And when they get really big, they have to do a lot of the same thing quickly. So they tend to be monocultures. And they also tend to not be able to, really tailor their care to all the nooks and crannies and different microbiomes of their farm. They have, they do their best because they're farmers and they're smart and they're professionals, but that is their challenge. It can be an inefficient in that way of how in a good farm, the soil deepens every year as you build it well, as you manage it well, and that's really hard to pull off in a really big operation. It's not easy for anybody to pull off, but it's harder the bigger you are. Or the other thing that farmers do is they stop just farming and they start moving into the middle. They start marketing or packaging or branding or distributing or collaborating with other related farms or producers that get into an entertainment business, for instance, and have events at their farm. They add other things besides farming to their business in order to afford to farm. That's about as far from money trees as you can get. Something different, this way comes something. Something different, something different. Something different, this way comes something. Something different, something different. So how did we get here? As far from money trees as you can get. I'll give you a one-word answer. Colonialism. I know we get mad about capitalism, but sometimes capital is a money tree garden. It's something that people have created together because it provides them value over time that's greater than the cost of installing it. That would be sustainable capital. But colonialism is a symptom of an unsustainable economy, one that cannot meet its local needs with its local means, either because of mismanagement or greed, or a combination thereof. They spill into the neighbors in order to take from them what they feel they need. The Romans were colonizers of violence, and after they had won a battle, they would rape the women and salt the fields, so that not only would you have no food because there had been war that year, but you would not be able to feed yourself for years to come and be reliant on those invaders who were perhaps fathers of some of the children now in that community in order to feed those children. It guts a culture to cut their relationship to land. A colonizer does this by going to a community that is sustainable. And when it's sustainable, local needs are met by local means. And trade is an act of relationship building. It's one of common agreement on value, trading surplus, educating one another, building relationship and adventures. There's a respect and that you can trust in trade between sustainable cultures. Colonizers use trade to be tricky, to first suss out what here do we want to take and how should we frame our negotiations to win this trade, to take more than it costs us. It's an unfair trade goal that they start with. And then, eventually, as they deplete the wealth and security of the trading partner, they make an agreement where they settle that land and they trick the people of that land in order to be able to say, well, no, obviously this is what you meant, and dominate them. Now, how's the they here? I want to have this evil person going, hey, this is all my plan. And perhaps some of the monarchs at the top that sent out their agents to do this were very clear that this was their goal. But I think it's a Tom Sawyer kind of a clear. It's easier to send somebody out on your behalf to do bullshit than it is to do it ourselves. We as people, we need to be the good person. And we tell ourselves stories in order to understand what we're doing to be in the interests of all, to be a good person actions. And what we do, we often don't actually own very clearly. It's because it's fitting the pattern of other people doing things around us. We are herd animals. We like to be in the middle of whatever the movement seems to be around us. That's why we're so generational, right? Each of us like to fit within the movement of our generation and how we're so culturally cohesive as well. But it's also about our brains. I mean, psychologists will tell you the only way that we do as much as we do is because our brains are very lazy / efficient. They look for patterns so they can stop paying attention. As soon as they've identified the pattern, then they just assume it continues. And they fill in the gaps. If they see, that's what speed reading is all about. If you see the beginning and the end of the word, you can usually be right about what the words are in between. But it makes us very vulnerable to missing things that are right in front of our nose. I will give you an example. And pardon me if you've heard me tell this before, but have you ever been snookered by an exercise where they ask you to follow this busy video and make sure you keep an eye on the ball as it moves around, and we'll test you at the end? And so you watch the video and you diligently keep your eye on the ball, and at the end they test you and say, so did you notice the gorilla? And you were so busy keeping your eye on the ball as told, you missed the gorilla. Me thinking that being able to meet local food needs locally was only something some places could do, and others would just not have the right weather for it, not have the right workforce for it, not have the right soil, was me missing the gorilla, that there's many ways to feed a people. And when you are part of a colony, of a colonizing culture, when you're many generation settler, agents of colonization, there have been boxed in to take a role on, to do a job, and grabbing and holding on tight to whatever story justifies that action and allows you to be blind to its actual impact and its probable falsity, even if it's right in front of you. I know I'm making excuses. I know I am. But I think we need to be kind to ourselves too, because we are all blind to something that's right in front of us. And the only way to gain more vision is to acknowledge that tendency to be blind. And also, our brains that hate having to do all the work of coming up with a whole new set of habits when we had these other habits that got us here perfectly well. We don't want to have to rewrite our history to make what we thought was us being good into being less than good. So a huge wave of resistance to that. And the second one is, oh my God, the work of changing up those habits for new habits. Huge wave of resistance to that. Those are the distractions that'll wander through the meditation of trying to do good when you are pickled in colonial culture, as our planet currently is. So, where do we find the money trees when we're so far from them in our current culture? I mean, what can we do? What can we do right now in order to manage our food systems in a way that kind of pushes towards a more sustainable food system? Well, it's like financial planning. It's funny how little cut and paste applies to different people. It's really about you. You will see the opportunities. And there's a few of them. One is building community. Build relationship with the people around you. Even a kind hello gives you a wealth that you can't find any other way that might make all the difference in being able to get through tough times. But you're not just in company with other people. There's plants. I know, I'm so frou-frou, what can I say? But notice the trees and the plants. You get a little app and see if you can recognize which ones are native to where you live, which ones are settlers, like I am, which ones are considered invasive. I mean, grass to me is the most invasive, pervasive waste of potentially living land we have, because it was developed primarily by the Victorians in order to have complete control and demonstrate their dominance over the natural landscape in a carpet-like space that needed a lot of manpower to keep it free of anything but lawn and a perfect surface for whatever they chose to use it for, sometimes often just to make look more orderly with a nice, pleasing, our little brains pattern to it, view outside a window. We got lawns all over the place. Every single one of them, I think, is an opportunity to build a different relationship with the place where you happen to be. Just dig up a bit of lawn and make it something else. Maybe what calls to you is about those money trees. Like, what food is there where you live? Maybe it's apple trees on your street that you could ask permission to pick when they're ripe, and applesauce. Learn to applesauce. So you can eat applesauce out of your freezer, or maybe you can figure out how to can it for months to come. Make an apple pie, one-off. Make an apple jelly. Apples are very much a plant that grew in relationship with human beings. It didn't just sprout out somewhere. We have evolved it just like so many of the food plants out there. They're not just fellow inhabitants of this planet. They are our close relatives. They feed us because we've cared for them and we've helped them grow to be what they are because it is in service to us both. That sort of thinking, right? Just meditate on that. That could be huge. Also, be courageous and tell stories. Tell stories where we are the good guys. How can we be the good guys? Who out there being a good guy you could talk about that is returning us to what we now call permaculture, returning us to a relationship with the places where we live, where there's more of what we value as plants and as animals right there. We know them. We have a relationship to them. Build a relationship with people that are growing food and producing food where you live. Understand what they're doing. See if you can pay attention to how they're doing it. Have they become farmers that also do all the other steps that in a colonial system is where the profit lies, right? A colonial system in their unfair trade will take away the security of growing the food you eat, make essential some middle step that they control so that they buy to us buy from us as producers, sell to us as eaters, and somehow they're the ones first in line to make any profit in that sequence. That's where the margin hides. So if you find where food is being produced where you live, see if you can then identify where the margin hides. And you know what? If you think you can't afford to eat local because it's too expensive, maybe make it a pet project to go and check that out, whether or not that's actually true. Because you know what? We did that here at the farmer's market. We paid attention to how much things were costing in grocery stores versus at the farmer's market, and it was very interesting. People didn't want to know. They just came with different eyes to the farmer's market. They just bought what they needed to buy at the grocery store. And being told that their assumption was wrong made a lot of people kind of angry. And it also made the farmers feel like they were in competition with one another. They were being told to lower their prices in order to win this little debate. So it didn't last for long, but boy, oh boy, was that ever an interesting story for me that has stuck with me ever since. Money trees. They're out there. Where are they in your life? Something Different This Way Comes is as independent as they come. It's a one-woman show from my apartment here in Thunder Bay, Ontario. And I'm so glad you're listening. In fact, I'd love to make it a conversation. If you want to email me, I promise I will read it. And if it's a fit, I'll include it. It would be really cool if you gave me an audio clip, you did on your phone maybe, or even video. Tell me a story. How is the rubber hitting the road where you are? What have you seen? What does it make you think about what good looks like? I'd love to know. Something Different This Way Comes at proton.me is my email address. You can help me out lots of ways, actually. I'd so appreciate it. You could join the newsletter. You can do that at both my websites. SomethingDifferentThisWayComes.ca also gives you a chance to contribute monetarily to my GoFundMe. At HeatherMcLeodWealth.ca, you could look into working with me as your certified financial planner. Advice only. I don't sell anything, except helping people build maps through this crazy world and realize whatever actions they then decide to take. It's an adventure, but it leaves you richer, honest. You can book a one-on-one to talk about it. I call it a financial planning health check. That's free. You just book a little bit of advice. I call it bite size. Or you can embrace the holistic of it. And then we'll work together for a while. That's at HeatherMcLeodWealth.ca. And I so appreciate a recommendation to a friend, a review, a like, a subscribe. Thank you. Something different, this way comes something. Something different, something different. Something different, this way comes something. Something